Good afternoon. Welcome to MAT123 Abstract Algebra. This is a course offered by LD Woosley, Bethany Colleges in the heart of Makati City. We thank the Lord for this week number 10 of our course. We're now on reviewing towards our midterm. Now let's just wait for our students to come in. We have 2 students here. Yan. Let's just wait for them to come in. Right? We'll be reviewing some concept today, no? Para medyo pahinga naman tayo sa computation. Okay, so far we have discussed some the groups, concept of groups, concept of sets. No? So this time we'll have some acquainted with match, with other concepts as far as algebraic structure is concerned, the sets, no? So etc. and etc. So we'll have that lecture for today. Okay, let's just wait for our student to come in. Yeah, at least one, so that I will be avoiding monologue. Okay, let's just wait for students to come in. Okay, let's open a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity where we could have our week number 10 for abstract algebra, the purpose of which to review some concepts as we go back to the previous topic, that you will help us understand the algebraic structures and how to categorize this into different groups or semi-groups or other categories, Lord. So we thank you. Continually bless the students as they will be coming in on our live stream. I pray for your mercy and grace be upon us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Okay, so let's continue. With or without the student. I know this will be another monologue, if that would be the case. Okay, so far I'll be reviewing this. This will be uploaded sooner or later. Okay, I'll be uploading now, while waiting for the student. So it'll be under, of course, this for our topic in midterm. Okay, good afternoon, Micaela. So we will be, since midterm is near, we'll be reviewing some concepts, perhaps reviewing some concepts from the start. By the way, Micaela, with or without us finishing the modules required for the SEM, our coverage will be until 1-7. Okay, 1-7. Kindly read both the modules and the lecture notes. So I'll be getting the test items from those modules. So starting 1-1-3, that will be the start of your midterm period until 1-7. So today we'll be reviewing much of concepts, perhaps clarify some relations as far as concepts concerned. So this is a review. I'll be uploading it now to our classroom so that this will be readily downloaded on our classroom course. No? So this will be under the title. Let me check. So I'll be uploading it now. Perhaps while waiting for Dale, no? So MAT123. Okay, abstract algebra review lectures. This will be under the title. Okay, what happened? Okay, it's there already. So I'll just post this. Oh. Under the title review lectures. By Michaela. So that would be a PDF file. This is the one that I'm presenting. Though this is not the entire coverage, we will not finish them all, but those are just appropriate until 1-7. Okay, are you there, Michaela?
Yes, po.
Okay, let's review some concepts, no? Starting from the start. No? I think we need to clarify this. So this is again a supplementary material from our module. So at least this time we could clarify some definitions and would add some more concepts, no? Because primarily abstract algebra is a concern of set or structure. We call it algebraic structures. Some in the graduate school, some call it algebraic structures, which is abstract algebra. So the structure of sets or group of numbers that are grouped together in certain characteristics, and there are referred to some terms or concepts that we need to understand today. And there will be some examples, perhaps. So perhaps next week we will be continuing on 1-5, no? So we left at 1-4, that's group, and then semi-group 1-5. So we will continue on that next week. But for the meantime, I'll be discussing more on these review lectures so that at least we may clarify some terms uh, uh, that we are using throughout this course. Okay. Okay naman yung text, no? Malaki na yung text, Michaela. No? Perhaps we could increase a little bit. Say 175. Yan. Right. So I think this is better. So a review. So of course we could have define a relation. So let A and B be a non-empty set. What do you mean by this, Michaela? When you say A and B are non-empty sets.
They have elements po.
They have non-empty sets, no? Meaning ibig sabihin hindi lang siya empty set. Kasi empty set is a set in itself, no? And empty set is actually a trivial part of the each of the set, but it should not be non-empty. Let and be non-empty. Kasi kung empty set, hindi applicable. Kung empty set lang, hindi applicable yung mga definition. Okay? So it must be non-empty. And it means empty and something else. For instance, a set a set of numbers, the first 5 counting numbers. So what will be the elements? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and empty set. So empty set is always there, no? It's actually a trivial or an informal member or element of the set. Nevertheless, it's always part of the set. But when you say non-empty, it's not just an empty set on itself, no? It should be empty set and something else. Okay, so hindi lang siya empty sets. Okay, there will be a relation from A to B is a set ordered pairs AB where A element of A and B element of B, no? So there are set of ordered pairs. So there must be a relation, but not necessarily an equation or equivalence. No? Hindi pa natin, it's not yet conclusive, but there is an ordered pair. And we're not yet sure if this is one-to-one correspondence or onto. Okay? So now, aside from that, no, so in a relation R of a set A is an equivalence of the relation in A provided. So there is now the concept of equivalence. Meaning we are comparing here set A in itself. No? In a relation R on set A is an equivalent in relation in A. So this must be in itself. No? First and foremost, we have in itself is R is reflective. The relation is reflexive such that there is an existing of element XX in element of R and all X in A. So reflexive is defined as the number equivalent to itself. So that must be a reflexive property. So part of the equivalence relation is reflexive. You should take note of this, Michaela, though it's already uploaded on our week 10 abstract algebra review lectures here. So this just at least my purpose is to refresh because I have already been bombarding you with the solve problems. No? So I think that's enough for now. We will refresh some concepts, theories on this case. So at least you could also establish the system of algebraic structures. No? So nagsimula yan sa set. Of course, the most general concept is a set, but set needs to be defined in terms of a relation, and that relation needs to be an equivalence relation. For instance, for the case of a set A in A. So there must be reflexive property, there must be symmetry as far as the ordered pair X and Y, whose element is R, implies Y, Y and X, elements of R. So there must be symmetry, and it's transitive. This is similar to equality, axioms of equality that we have discussed sometimes. No? R is transitive, that is, you have the ordered per xy element of R, and yz element of R implies x and z element of R. So that's transitive. So all of this would define an equivalence relation of set A in A. Okay, makes sense, Michaela? So it could be an equivalence relation. So we could define in terms of reflexive, symmetric, and transitive. So parang this could be in college algebra translated into axiom of equality, wherein you have reflexive, you have symmetric and transitive property of equality. So this is the same concept. Meaning, if you have these three, one set is equivalent to another. There is equivalence in terms of reflexive, symmetric, and transitive. Here are examples. No? Z is an integer, a set of integer, and M is a fixed positive number. So the relation of the congruence modulo M in Z is an equivalence relation in Z. So there is an equivalent relation based on modulo M. For instance, modulo 4. So that if that would be an integer, it will be 0, 1, 2, 3. No? So there are equivalents. No? So we could prove the equivalence for this. No? In terms of reflexive, no? We could identify, we could pick one or two elements of that modulo m, perhaps modulo 4. So we have elements 0, 1, 2, 3 for that integer because this is an integer, no? In an equivalence relation in Z. So there is indeed, we could establish that without this could be assumed without verification, but of course we could always verify and look for samples now for this case. Now we define a function. So a function is more specific from the relation. Makes sense, Micaela? So a function is not just a relation. There must be something specific on the function. Same as true with college algebra, no? So we have a relation, not necessarily a function. So what makes a relation a function? So here, of course, the assumption is there are non-empty sets A and B, a function from A to B. So there is a relation, is a relation formed from A and B. So a function f from A to B is a relation from A to B. So these are okay. The domain of f is A. So there's a domain, and of course the counterpart is the range. No? Yan yung makikita natin dyan. So the domain of the function is A. So meaning on the x, parang yung x and y to eh. So y is equal to function of x, the domain. If x and y elements of f and x and z elements of f, it follows that y is equal to c. So there's this equivalency as well, because yan, that would also define a function. So yung x and y ordered pair is an element of f. Therefore, x and z, because wala namang ibang correspondence yung x maliban kay y. So there's a sense of one-to-one correspondence, though it's not yet defined here in the later slide. We have xy element of f, xz element of f. Then it follows that y is equal to c. So there must be a sense of one-to-one correspondence here. No? Now the image of f denoted by the image f or f of a is a set for all f of a such that a is element of a. Yan. So parang yung f of a mo, yan yung y. Yan yung y. Yung a mo, yung x. Parang ganun yan sa college algebra. So we're just recalling here. I hope you would reread this also, no? Because I'll be getting much of my conceptual questions from this. So this time you will have a multiple choice for midterms. Medyo ano natin. So more on conceptual rather than there of course are some computational, but this time we will I'll be basing my concepts here on this lecture aside from the one that we could get from the other module. So this time we will have a multiple choice for midterm examination. Okay, so Micaela, no? So the coverage will be until 1-7 for the midterm. So start reading 1-4. 1-3, am I right? We started 1-3. 1-3 up to 1-7 plus this lecture. I hope Dale would connect to the internet or YouTube. Okay, so let's continue, no? So these are some parameters. So the image, there's an image. Actually, pag pinat mo rin yan sa Cartesian plane, parang ganun din yan. Y is equal to function of x. So there are correspondence. So ito na yung mga na-discuss natin last time. Though there are some technical terms that I would like to share to you. The function f is onto or surjective. So the technical term is surjective. Please take note of this, Michaela. The other term for onto is surjective. So I don't know, it appears from the dictionary, no? I doubt. So most of the mathematical technical math terms may not be part of the jargon, no? But nevertheless, the term here is surjective or onto if the image of f is equal to b, no? That is, yan, nahuhulog si ano. So welcome back. So that is for each b element of b, there exists an a element of a such that b is actually function of a. So parang y is equal to f of x lang yan eh. So yan yung ano natin, no? So there exists. No, that is surjective onto. So may image ka, perhaps sa kabila, Cartesian plane, yung x may image sa y. And of course, b is an element of b, and there exists a element of a such that b, a specific point or a specific unit, is a function of a. So just like writing it, y is equal to function of x or f of x. So that is onto or surjective. And there's also one-on-to-one. The function f is one-to-one or injective. So take note of the term injective, provided that x and y elements of a such that x is not equal to y, then f of x is not equal to f of y. So it follows that way. So there's a one-to-one. So kasi kung hindi sila magkakatumbas, kundi constant yan, walang function sa constant. Now if there exists, if a is equal to x equal to y, so it follows that f of x equal to f of y. So there will be no one-to-one correspondence because in every point of x, no, there's not a unique value, no, for x and y correspondence because x is equal to y. No, and also their function is equal. So it must not be equal. X not equal to y, then it follows that function of x is not equal to function of y. So this is called one-on-one, one-to-one, or what we call injective. So for onto, surjective. For one-to-one is injective. Okay? So these are nosebleed terms, but nevertheless, please review. And the function is bijective if it's both injective and surjective. If it is both onto and one-to-one. No? So one-to-one correspondence. Yan. So meron kang one-to-one, meron kang onto, bijective ang tawag doon. It's both injective and surjective. Yan. So that defines a function. Okay? That defines a function. Now, the next topic we have, basically, if you may recall, is binary operations. So we have a term here in your textbook. It's called set G. Perhaps the one that will be used here is set S. And there's what we call an operation, a binary operation, whether a multiplication or an addition. But that is called binary operation. It's not necessarily be equivalent to our algebraic addition or algebraic multiplication, but it could have its own definition. Now, normally, we represent it in an asterisk or plus sign. So that's it. No? Let S be a non-empty set. A binary operation on S is a function from S times S into S. So meaning there is an operation S on the function. So that's a binary operation. Okay. So here are the terms now. Michaela, these are added terms. A non-empty set together with binary operation. Now, kaya siya letter G is what we call groupoid. So generally, an empty set that has an operation a set together with the binary operation is called a groupoid. So it's more a general term. No, it's not just the group; it's a groupoid. Okay, so you need to take note from a non-empty set. No, then you have a binary operation together with the set itself. It's called a groupoid. Okay, makes sense, Michaela? So this is something new. This term is something new. I need to insert this so that
Yes,
at least we may have some terms necessary. So that's what we call a groupoid. Now, it consists of the set in the binary operation. A binary operation on an empty set, G or groupoid, is said to be commutative. So there must be a commutativity, no, defined on a groupoid such that A and B are in G. Okay. So another is associative, no, in this case. So we have already learned that. So a commutative associative for A, B, C, and G. And we define the semi-group is a groupoid in which on a particular binary operation is associative. No, it's a groupoid. Hindi pa siya group semi-group pa lang siya. Semi-group. No, mas general, Michaela, yung set. Sumunod doon, yung binary operation. Actually, parallel yung set sa binary operation. Combination ng set, elements of the set plus binary operation is a groupoid. And then from the groupoid, we have a groupoid that is associative. So it must be a semi-group. Yan. A semi-group. So you take note of that. A semi-group is a groupoid in which it is associative. No? So there must be associative property. There's a sense of associativity for variables A, B, and C or X, Y, Z on G. Then you have the monoid. Ayan, monoid. Magiging monoid naman siya. So una, again, concept of set. And then you have the binary operation. What will be the, how do you call that, Michaela? Set and binary operation together. Set and binary operation together is what we call
groupoid po.
Mahina dating mo, pakilakas na.
Sir, pumutol po yung question.
Oh, sige. Groupoid yun, groupoid. Groupoid. Yung tinatanong ko yung definition ng groupoid. So combination ng binary operation saka yung set na non-empty. Yung set plus the binary operation is groupoid. Now, when the groupoid becomes associative, now based on the lecture, what do you call that?
Plus, semoid po.
Semi-group. No? Semi-group. Okay, ayan. Semi-group is a groupoid which is associative. Okay, pag sinama mo yung groupoid associative, that's what we call semi-group. Semi-group siya. Okay? So remember that. And then kasi marami tayong terms sa pag-aaralan ngayon, Michaela. Kaya kailangan mong reviewin ito. So of course, pwede naman yan. You could create a relational concept on the relation. Basta set, binary operation, groupoid that is associative, semi-group. Okay? Semi-group siya. Yan, semi-group is a groupoid which is associative with respect to that binary operation. Okay? Now, we have another concept, what we call monoid. Kasi hindi agad siya naging group eh. No, doon sa presentation natin nakaraan, group dinefine ko na agad yung group. No? Dinefine na natin yung group doon. But eto, iniisa-isa natin. Excuse me. Ayan. So this time, a semi-group is a groupoid that is associative monoid is a semigroup which contains elements E. So this is pertaining now to the two-sided identity element. Okay? So yung semigroup na may identity element two-sided, di ba? That's part of the group. That's the part of the characteristic of the group. Pero hindi pa tayo doon. Papunta pa lang tayo sa group. No? Ito yung tinatawag na monoid. No? Ang groupoid na associative ay semigroup. It's a groupoid that's associative, semigroup, at ang semigroup na may identity element, particularly double-sided identity, is a monoid or a monoid. Okay? Kopya ba, Micaela? Kasi iniisa-isa natin yung properties ng group, pero bawat property may kanya-kanyang tawag. Nagsimula ka sa groupoid, and then semigroup, and then monoid. Monoid is a semigroup that has double-sided identity, meaning there is commutativity as far as identity is concerned, whether it's placed on the left or the right. So you have an equivalent, pareho lang siya dapat. So what we call two-sided identity of G, that's a monoid. Okay? Make sense, Micaela?
Yes.
Okay. And then, now is the group. Ano yung kulang? Ano yung missing property? No? Doon sa dalawa. Meron kang associative, meron kang identity, ano yung susunod na, ano yung isa pa para maging group siya?
Inverse po.
Yung inverse property. So groupoid, semigroup kapag associative ang groupoid. Kapag ang semigroup ay may double-sided identity, that is monoid. And that monoid, if it has a double-sided inverse, then there you go. That's the definition of a group. So a group is a monoid G such that there is for every element A, there is an element X such that their product is equal to that element called identity element. So that's what we call two-sided inverse of A. Is usually denoted by inverse of A. Okay? So that's, kaya napunta tayo sa group. Okay? Then, so, siguro let's recall the flow. First, we have the set. Okay, we have the set and the binary operation combined. How do you call them?
Groupoid po.
Groupoid. And then the groupoid is associative.
Monoid.
Hindi mo na. Semigroup.
Semigroup.
And then a semigroup who is double-sided, has double-sided identity element.
Monoid.
That's a monoid. And then the monoid that has double-sided inverse is
Group po.
sa group. Yun, di ba? Ayan. So, bahala ka na dyan. Paano ano yan. So, but anyway, so those are, I presented this supplementary so that makita mo yung flow, yung development niya, yung algebraic structure. So, nagsimula sa general concept ng group, ay ng set, and then binary operation, then groupoid, then you have the semigroup, monoid, and then here you go, a monoid that has a two-sided inverse is a group. Then of course, we have also learned the Abelian group. Now the Abelian, again, if the group is commutative in its binary operation, it's called an Abelian group. Okay? So I think this had been discussed also previously. Abelian group. Okay. Micaela, for a while, I need please bear with me for a minute. I need to be off for a while. Okay, I'm back. So that's Abelian. No? So Abelian is a special group wherein there's commutativity. Okay, we have some examples here of groups. Yeah, so most of these we already encountered, now even on our samples of our previous module discussion. First of all, set of integers under addition. So of course, there are still three conditions for a group. So yun yung three conditions na dapat natin yung associativity, no? Yung associativity, and then you have identity, and then the inverse property. So those are the three tests again, such that we could declare a particular set, a set group, no, under a particular binary operation. Okay, whether it's addition or multiplication. Okay, I think we could verify that. No, we could verify. I think we already we have done some octave activity, no, proving, Micaela, previously. Okay, so I don't need to. Perhaps we could, of course, rational numbers under addition, real numbers under addition. I think there is even the complex, no? Complex under addition, no? It will still be no, kasi yung associativity, we could prove that. And then there's also an inverse and identity as well. How about this second set? The set U for all imaginary numbers, elements of complex number, such that 0 raised to 4 is equal to 1, minus 1 is equal to 0 under complex multiplication. In complex multiplication. So what are those values of Z that would be appropriate, Micaela? If you will look carefully on that condition for number 5. What are the set?
I po.
I. I lang.
Ito ba imaginary numbers? So yung D?
Take note, this is 0 raised to 4. So I'm expecting 4 roots. Apat ang roots niyan. 0 raised to 4 to eh. So there are 4 roots on that. So what are the answers? So based on, of course, we need to test first. Okay, complex, no? Z complex. So meaning, so ano yung apat na roots muna?
I, negative I, 1, negative I.
Okay, let's verify. Okay, so those are the 4 roots. So of course, 1 and negative 1 is part of the root, but we need to include also negative I and I as part of the root. So under complex multiplication. So we could verify. So anyway, this is part of the group. So under complex multiplication. So we could test for instance, we could test I and negative I and I. Now we could test negative I and I. Of course, yung associativity niya, so ilagay na rin natin yung tatlo. So 1, I, and negative I. Of course, definitely, it's obviously we could make sense of the associativity. Okay, this is just for the purpose of computation. Okay, so the answer is 1. So obviously, if we will put a bracket here, it's still 1. So associativity. Okay, so associativity is checked. Among the elements, is there identity element for multiplication?
One po.
Wala? Sure ka?
1, sir, 1.
Walang 0. Ito lang, oh. Yan lang yung set, eh. Based on the
1
definition
po,
of the
sir.
equation. Ah? So it's 1. Yeah, 1.
1.
1 is the identity element. Okay? So which is part of the set. Kasi kung wala yung 1 sa set, walang identity element. Alright? So hindi naman siya pwedeng negative 1. So it must be a check. And the inverse is still there. What will be the inverse of negative 1?
One po, sir.
Inverse of negative 1 is 1. Okay. When you define an inverse, when you multiply an element by its inverse, the answer is negative 1. Is positive 1 rather, which is the identity. So what number multiplied to negative 1 is equal to 1?
Negative 1 po.
Negative 1 itself. Okay? How about I? What when multiplied to what number would bear negative or positive 1? Because positive 1 is the identity element. And the answer is part of the set. No, kasi pag wala diyan sa set, hindi na agad yan. It will not be satisfied, the condition for group. Though it's listed here among group, yes, we are just proving that there is satisfaction of these 3 conditions of associativity, identity, and inverse property. What's the inverse of I?
Negative I.
Okay, so negative I. Yan. Negative I. Okay? So, negative I is present? Yes, it's present. Ayan, negative I. Oh. It's present. Of course, inverse of negative I is
I.
Yan, it's I. Yan. So, all of which is present. So, you have the inverses and you have an identity element, and we could also check the associativity. So, this must be a group. No? Okay? Next. So, this one, modulo. Integer under modulo operation. Now, of course, this is representing by m-1. For instance, if you have z modulo 4, for instance, the element should be 0, 1, 2, 3 only because it's m-1. Under addition, modulo m. Yung addition nito, so ang sagot mo lang dapat 0, 1, 2, 3. Hindi ka pwedeng sumobra doon. So kasi modulo addition siya. Where m is an element of the positive elements of integer or positive integers. Yan. So we could verify that. Perhaps we could create kasi pag modulo, no? So this is proven in addition. Of course, we have 0 as your identity. And then we could prove, no? Actually, associativity, 1 1 plus 2 plus 3, 1 plus 2 plus 3. So these are associative. O kaya lang sa modulo, ano ang 1 plus 3, Micaela, pag modulo 4 siya? 1 plus 3 is equal to
3 po.
one plus 3.
Sa modulo, sir?
Oo.
3 po, sir. Tama po ba?
1 plus 3. Zero, 1, 2, 3. 3 plus 1, wala ka ng 4, di ba? So, babalik ka uli sa 0. So, paikot-ikot lang siya doon. 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. So, 1 plus 3 is 0. 2 plus 3 is 1. O, di ba? So, ganun lang siya. 3 plus 3 is, what's 3 plus 3? 2. Di ba saan ka nakakita ng ganun? Modulo kasi yon. Modulo 4 addition. No, pero pag walang modulo 4, ibig sabihin normal addition lang. What? Kung ano lang siya, no? Normal addition 'yon. Pero pag modulo, umiikot lang siya doon sa kung anong element ng under that modulo addition. For instance, modulo 4, ibig sabihin 0, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 lang yung gagamitin mo. Umiikot-ikot lang siya. Okay? So this must be that modulo. And also, we have proven in some cases the n by n matrix or the square matrix under matrix addition alone. No? So of course, your n should be positive integer. No? Positive integer siya. So na-prove natin to last time, no? I think previously, that there is associativity, there's identity, and inverse. No? Meron din siyang inverse. Okay? As far as matrix addition is concerned. So that's one of the group. And then the cross product of Z2, 2 or integers under component-wise addition modulo 2. So pag modulo 2, 0 and 1 lang yan. So pwede siya. 0 and 1 lang. Umiikot-ikot lang doon yung value for component mon. But anyway, we won't anymore discuss that. And then set of symmetries of an equilateral triangle. No? Yan, symmetries of equilateral triangle. And also the symmetries of a square. Set of symmetries of the square. So we may not anymore go to that geometrical symmetries. All right? So again, let's clarify. Set and binary operation would create what? Micaela?
Groupoid po.
Groupoid, that is associative.
Semigroup.
Okay, a semigroup that has identity.
Monoid po.
Monoid. And monoid that has inverse.
Group po.
Sa group. Yan. So dapat medyo maintindihan mo na yun. Alright. So ito naman, monoids. So ibig sabihin, ang kulang dito, anong kulang sa monoid? Ay yung inverse property.
Inverse po.
Okay, bakit kaya yung integers under multiplication ay monoid lang? So of course, ma-check natin siya, associativity, tatama naman siya. Identity, yes, meron din because we have 1 as an identity element. Pagdating dun sa inverse, yan, ano ba? Check mo yung inverse ng 2. What's the inverse of 2?
Negative 2 po.
Hindi, for multiplication. Nasaan na tayo? For multiplication.
1/2.
1/2. 1/2 is not an integer. It's not close. So, palpak siya dun sa pangatlo. So, monoid lang siya. Okay? So, ano pa? Set of rational under, karamihan under multiplication, hindi sila tumama doon sa ano lang. So, rational numbers under multiplication. Yan. Kasi, it's very probable, now if you have multiplication here, it's probable that, yan, may mga integers. No? Set of rational numbers that has q under multiplication. So, ito kasing integer, may rational number. Okay, yung rational number, pag minultiply mo, there's a possibility na irrational or non-rational number siya, or perhaps integer. So monoid pa rin siya. And then set of real numbers under multiplication. Bakit kaya pating real numbers? Ito, pangkalahatan na, real numbers. No? Set of real numbers under multiplication. Is there an exception?
Complex numbers.
Come again, Michaela?
Complex number po, sir.
Hindi, real numbers lang to. Not yet under complex. Real number lang siya.
Po, sir, I mean, baka po may inverse na complex po.
May inverse na complex. May inverse na complex. Let me think about that. So, kung in-inverse mo yung complex, magiging real ulit. Ganun ba?
Hindi, sir. Baka po may inverse ang isang real number na complex po.
Like what? Kasi kung real number siya, dapat real number din yung inverse niya. Pero monoid siya, hindi siya group. So, ibig sabihin, pumalpak siya sa inverse property. So, ang tanong ko, ano yung exemption? Dito sa integer, possible na ang rason dyan ay non-integer. May mga non-integer inverse, so hindi na siya pasok doon. Sa rational naman, kasi pag binigay ko yung sa rational, yun na rin yung halos sagot doon sa real. Palagay mo, mayroon bang exemption to the rule? Na hindi lahat ng inverse na real ay meron ng real na lalabas? Aside from your, perhaps your guess that there might be a real number that has an inverse of complex. What do you think?
Wala po po akong naisip.
Okay, how about 0? What's the inverse of 0? Actually, it goes also with Z and Q and R. Kasi wala naman nakalagay niya na positive eh. Ibig sabihin, hindi niya in-specify na positive. Na positive lang or yung asterisk, yung may isa pang connotation dyan. No? So, it's generally integer, rational, or R. So, by virtue of multiplication, if you'll get the inverse, infinity. So, infinity is considered as not a number. For a while lang, Michaela, saglit lang. I have a call. Okay, I'm back. Di ba, Micaela, 0 is an exemption. It doesn't have an inverse. On that set, you cannot find infinity there. Yes, it's continuous, pero infinite is not part of that element. So it must be, it's not a group, it's just a monoid as well. Okay, make sense ba, Micaela? Make sense? Unless you may think of other exemption. Kasi sa integer, possible na fraction yung inverse. So pagdating sa Q naman, kasi sa Q or sa R, 0 eh. 0 talaga exemption dyan eh. So hindi pwede maging rational yung infinity. Hindi rin pwede maging real number siya. It's not part of that set. Okay? So ganun din naman yung multiplication modulo M doon sa, so there is also from 0, 1, 2, 3 for instance modulo M. So hindi siya makakapag-create ng inverse, no? Walang ganun din siya, no? Halimbawa, inverse of 2, 1/2. So wala doon yung walang 1/2 doon sa set. So yung number 4 ay hindi agad papasok doon. Okay, set of complex numbers of C under multiplication. Oh, yan, multiplication. So complex numbers under multiplication. So perhaps pwede siya sa associative, pwede siya sa identity element 1. No? How about dun sa inverse? Ito, Micaela, ang possible na magkaroon ka ng real number na inverse. What do you think? Or hindi ba? So ano yung magiging exemption to the rule nito? Halimbawa, 1 plus I. Yan, it has still a complex number. Or perhaps 1 over I. So kanina, it's still a complex number. No? So bakit kaya monoid lang siya? Under multiplication. So perhaps it's still an inverse, no? An issue of the inverse. Kasi identity, it's 1 eh. Multiplicative identity is 1. Yung 1 mismo, hindi complex. Tama. Tama, Micaela. 1 is not complex because it does not have any imaginary counterpart. Hindi pwedeng 0 imaginary sa convert. That would distinguish complex from real number. Okay, yung mismong identity pala. Do kasi yung inverse naman, imaginary pa rin eh, pasok. Kasi 0 yung real. Pero pag ang imaginary ang 0, hindi pwedeng maging complex yun. Real number lang yun. Though subsume ang real number sa complex. Okay? Makes sense, Micaela. That's why set of complex numbers under multiplication is a monoid. It's not a group. Because of the inverse property. Okay? Make sense?
So ano po yung 1 negative 1 po niya? Yung roots. Parang roots lang po talaga siya pero hindi siya kasama sa complex number.
Come again? Pakiulit.
Yung ano po yung I negative I 1 tas negative 1. Hindi na po siya necessarily sa complex number.
Saan?
Roots
Ito ba?
lang po siya.
Ito yon. Yung kanina?
Opo.
Ito ba yung tinutukoy mo? Yung problem kanina?
Opo, sir.
Yan. Dito yan eh. It's a different case. Ito yun. In-specify niyo yung equation. Na dapat yung C mag-satisfy doon sa equation na to. Okay? So, it's element of complex. Kasi element pa rin siya ng complex. No? Actually, pag tinanggal ko dyan yung real number, wala na agad yung ano eh. Wala na agad yung identity. So, yun ba yung tinutukoy mo? Kung tatanggalin ko yung 1 saka negative 1 dyan, because yung Z mo, element of complex, ano pa rin, hindi pa rin siya valid as, hindi, actually, pasok. Tama, kasama pala. Kasama dito kasi in-specify niya yung roots eh. So, hindi naman pwedeng, yung dalawang roots lang yung makita natin. No? Hindi pwedeng, dito kasi in-specify Micaela yung equation. Na ito yung masasatisfy. Yung intersection ng complex saka ito yung 4. Unlike dito, sa monoid, general siya.
Pero sir, hindi po ibig sabihin na yung 1, negative 1 complex number po siya.
Actually, pwede siyang ano eh, I'm thinking pwede siyang complex with the zero imaginary. Kasi kung tutuusin, complex is higher than real and imaginary. So actually, real plus imaginary is complex. No? So I'm thinking on that. So saan kaya siya sumablay? So what would be the probable, ano yung na-violate niya? Bakit siya monoid lang? Under multiplication. Kung isasama natin yung 1, of course, pasok na yung identity. Paano yung inverse? Yung inverse ng complex din. So paano yung reconciliation? Set of complex numbers. Kasi dito in-specify complex number. So meaning it has non-zero, meron siyang element ng real saka imaginary number. Unlike dito, in-specify out of that complex, it must satisfy this expression. Kaya sinama natin yung negative 1 saka 1. But for here, so we are expecting, we're expecting also complex number. Kasi, but since a real number is also part of the complex, so pwede siyang pumasok pala doon. No? So identity is checked. However, the inverse, ano kaya yung magiging, sige nga, mag-ano nga tayo ng mag-ano tayo ng situation here. Kasi set of complex number lang eh. So napaka-infinite nung set na to, no? Kasi normally, ang complex is actually, yun nga, yung R plus minus imaginary, no? So you have your real number and then imaginary, no? So if that would be the case, now what will make a number complex is the imaginary, not necessarily the real number. Pwede kasi maging 0 yung real number. No? It is still a complex number, but kung ang imaginary ang 0 is no longer complex, it's on the realm of real number, though ang real number part siya ng complex number. But what makes the number complex is not the real number but the imaginary number. So if you will, if imaginary is equal to 0, then it's no longer complex, just a plain real number. So ganun yung take ko doon. Kaya yung imaginary, hindi siya papasok. Yung identity ng imaginary ay ng complex number which is equal to 1, hindi pasok yung 1 doon. Kasi 0 yung imaginary mo. Parang ang idea nito, lalabas palagi dapat sa sagot, may real saka imaginary. Okay, samantalang ito, ito yung sinod natin kanina, ang lalabas sa sagot, silang 4 lang. Dito naman, ang lalabas palaging complex. May real saka imaginary part. Or at least, there's an imaginary part. Wait lang po, Michaela, I need to answer this one. Okay, Michaela, nakita mo yung distinction. Kasi dito sa yung previous number, dito lang sa 4 na to kukunin yung sagot, whether it's associative, identity, or inverse. Makikita mo yung sagot sa 4. Samantalang dito sa complex, very generic siya, possible na yung element ay hindi complex. Kumbaga, zero imaginary. So if that would be the case, he failed on that particular property, or he is not close to that property. Okay, Michaela? Do you see the distinction? Kasi ito, dinefine as on the equation. Dinefine siya on the equation. Ito naman, very generic term. Na complex number lang under multiplication. One thing I could see, that the identity element is a real number, not a complex number, which is equal to 1. So, or unless there must be, sige, ganito, unless there must be an inverse that is not complex. Michaela, can you think of that? Merong, pag in-inverse mo, may hindi masasagot na ano. Parang siguro parang to make that consistent na lang, no? Kasi kung tinanggap natin yung negative 1, so ang point mo ba kung complex tinanggap yung negative 1 and negative 1 and negative dito dahil complex naman talaga siya, though it satisfies the equation, same as true as applied here sa complex. So complex composed of both imaginary and real numbers in general. Michaela, what do you think? No, ganun na lang. We could define complex as composition of both real and imaginary. Just like this one, both imaginary, real and imaginary composition. So that is a complex number. So pasok lahat dito yung property. So kaya siya group. Paano dito hindi siya group? But monoid lang siya? Yun ang tanong natin. So, if we will accept, assuming we could accept both real and imaginary combined to have a complex number, so papasok siya sa identity. Meron siyang identity. Meron din siyang associativity. So inverse pa rin talaga yung issue. Ano kaya ang, so of course that would apply. So the only way I'm thinking, the only real number that doesn't have inverse is 0 itself. So applicable doon sa reasoning natin for rational and real number. So I think that would satisfy both. Kasi dito naman sa example natin kanina, ito lang yung specific element involved because of the defined equation. For here, it's generic. So it will include 0 also. So aside from the real number, imaginary number, and 0 is also a real number. So it's part of that complex number. Whereas, when you get the inverse, no, we cannot consider it as complex. So meaning the answer is not close to complex, therefore it's not, doesn't have any inverse property. Therefore, it's just a monoid. Okay, can you comment on that, Micaela? Okay na, consistent na. Kasi dito dinefine kasi ng equation eh. Kaya sinama natin yung 1, -1. So kung consider siya as part of the complex, so ganun din naman sa 5. Excuse me. We could include 0. 0 yung ano, when you get the inverse, it will fail on that, no, under multiplication. Okay? So let's move on. So set of square matrix over R under matrix multiplication. All right? So yung n by n under addition, pasok siya doon sa group. Pero yung multiplication hindi pasok sa group, monoid. So ibig sabihin, ang issue niya pa rin dito inverse. So may problema siya sa inverse. No? Kasi dito when n is equal to an integer passive, the elements may not be integer. Tama? It's more or like fraction. Okay? For instance, I will say assign here okay, I would like to compute for the inverse of matrix A. So there, it's not integer. So again, it fails on the inverse. So it's just a monoid. Same as true with the cross product, no, of cross product of 2 modulo. So 0, 1, 0, 1 under component wise multiplication modulo 2. So kasi dyan, ang issue naman dyan ay yung 0. Yung inverse ng 0, hindi mo makikita sa 0 and 1. Kasi component niya ng 0 and 1 eh, kasi modulo 2. No? Inverse of 0. What's the inverse of 0? So you cannot find it in modulo 2. So still a monoid. It's not a group. Okay? So dito sa number 7. Okay, this time, ano nga ba yung semigroup? Pagkakaiba ng semigroup sa monoid, Micaela?
Identity po.
Ano yung may identity?
Semigroup.
Semigroup yung may identity? O yung monoid?
Yes, wala ka dyan.
So unang-una, groupoid. Groupoid, ano yung susunod? A groupoid that is associative. What's that?
Monoid po.
Semigroup muna. Tama? Semigroup muna. O, balikan natin. Ayan. Ayan, semigroup. A groupoid that is associative. A groupoid that is associative is semigroup. A semigroup that has two-sided identity, that's monoid. Okay? Micaela? So, ang monoid, ang may identity element. Ang groupoid, wala. Meron lang silang pareho. Ang common denominator nila, associative property. Pero ang may identity ay monoid. At yung inverse, monoid, yes. Yung, of course, pag may inverse, group na siya. Okay ba, Micaela? Lakas yung tawa. Okay? So ito, it is a semigroup. Ibig sabihin, meron siyang It's a groupoid that has associativity but doesn't have identity. Let me allow. I will allow you to inspect this, no, and give me a counter example. A set of even integers under multiplication. Okay, you can give me an example for this.
Yung identity po niya.
Okay, yung identity niya ang issue dyan, which is not an even number. It's an odd number. Tama ba? Odd number ba? Yes, it's an odd number. 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. is an odd number. So if you're looking for a set of even number, the identity is not close to that set. So meaning, so it's just a semi-group. It's not a monoid. Okay, make sense? Now, sige, let's move on to this concept of semi-groups, monoids, and group. So this time we will look into the properties of this, semi-groups, monoids, and group. So parang sa hierarchy siya, no? Pagiging specific, no? Nagsimula ka sa groupoid, semi-groups, monoid, and then groups. So yung groups ay nagtataglay ng tatlo. No? Bukod dun sa binary operation. Yung property ng binary operation. No? Plus the element, that's groupoid, and then semi-group, monoid, and groups. Okay. So if G is a monoid, then the identity element is unique. So we have a unique identity element for a monoid. No? And also for the group, because a group is a monoid with inverse to double-sided inverse property. So in a way, technically a monoid, a group is a monoid. But a monoid is not necessarily a group. Okay? So a group is a monoid. Tama ba, Micaela? A group is a monoid. But a monoid is not always a group.
Yes po.
Okay? So group is always a monoid, but monoid is not always group. Ayan. Dali lang, medyo mainit. Inom muna tayo ng tubig. Okay. In a way, I'm reviewing conceptually, no? Because abstract algebra is conceptual more than computational. No? So, yan, re-review natin. At least sabay in your mind, by this time, you already have the structure. Hindi siya non-related, but interrelated. All of the concepts that we're learning here are interrelated in one another in some sense. No? Okay. We have this theorem here. If G is a monoid, meaning it has both associativity and identity. No? Kulang na lang sa kanya para maging group ay inverse. Yan, is unique. The identity element is unique, meaning it's for a cluster of set of numbers, this is one of a kind. It's a unique. No? So here are some theorems, no, that would we could have applied the definition of a monoid and a group, no. So this time a group would be would compose also of the identity property aside from the the inverse property aside from the associativity and the identity. So let G be a group then, wherein C is an element of G, that group, and CC, so meaning there is an binary operation here in terms of multiplication is equal to C. Now simply, C is equal to that identity element because a number multiplied by itself is itself. How come? Unless C is an identity element. Okay? So meaning we coined it as letter E, the identity element. Now that's the first one. Then the inverse of an element is unique. So yan pa yung isa natin titingnan. In a particular group, the inverse is unique. The inverse is for that particular number or set alone. No? So yung inverse, halimbawa, inverse ng 3 is 1/3, para kay 3 lang yon, at yung 1/3 para kay 3 din. So inverse of 3 is 1/3, inverse of 1/3 is 3. It's good for rational numbers. So it's unique. The inverse is unique. And then left and right cancellation laws hold on G. So meron kang, pwede kang mag-cancel sa kaliwa, pwede ka rin mag-cancel sa kanan. No? So there is a left and right cancellation laws. No? Assuming that you hold both for left and right side of the equation, you could cancel. So that what we call the cancellation laws applied on G if you have a group that has a unique inverse. No? A unique inverse. And then for each A element of G, then we have the inverse of A is equal to A. Dahil unique nga yung inverse niya, therefore, pag in-inverse mo yung inverse, babalik ka sa number na yon. Alright? So, yun yung may kita natin doon. Okay, clarification, Micaela? You have something to say?
Wala naman.
Okay, since unique ang A dito, pag kinuha mo yung inverse ng inverse niya, babalik siya dun sa number. No, kasi kung hindi unique, it could lead to another number. No, halimbawa, inverse of A is not unique to A, meaning there's another item or equivalent quantity. When you take the inverse, it will lead to that other quantity, not anymore to A. So it won't go back to A. So therefore, it's not a unique inverse. So but for this case, the reverse of that, you will go back to the original number here. And then another property of a group is that A and B element of G. With A, there's what we call the distributive property here. The distribution AB. Inverse of AB is equivalent to inverse of B times inverse of A. Yan. So, meron siyang sense of no? Kasi anyway, ito naman ay left and no? So, it could be applied. So, kasi kung abelian, hindi pa pala abelian to. So, possible na ganito lang siya. No, pero kung ang group ay abelian, automatically we could apply commutative laws there. It's an abelian group, a special type of group with commutativity. Okay? So for each AB, the equations AX equal to B and YA is equal to B have unique solutions. So it has unique solutions or intersections. Yan. So that is the properties of a group. Okay, again, what's a semigroup, Micaela?
Groupoid po
Okay, a groupoid that is associative. And a groupoid that is associative semigroup. So, ito naman yung sa kanya. No? So far, we have discussed the property, very limited yung sa monoid. No, monoid isa lang, pero group, yan, madami siyang property because of the inverse. Yung inverse nandun din sa group. And then yung semi-group, na meron lang siyang hold na associativity. No? Then G is a group. Let G be a semi-group. Then G is a group, no? If and only if, no? Assuming the premise is that it's a semi-group. No? It's a semi-group. So there must be special to that semi-group for that to become a group. So that would include both identity and inverse property. So group, semi-group plus the identity inverse properties would create a group. So yan yung assumption dyan. Then G is a group if and only if for all A, B element of G, the following condition hold. So it has only the associativity if there exists an element G such that so EA is equal to A, so identity element. So meron kang semi-group na may identity element At the same time, meron kang semi-group na may identity plus inverse. Yan. Saka lang siya magiging group. Ang semi-group magiging group kapag may identity siya, saka may inverse property. Okay? Now, these are supposed lesson, no? Semi-group and subgroups. So, tutuloy ko na rin to. So, again, I might continue this or perhaps go directly to the problem solvings by next week, week 11 and 12. No, for us to apply concepts. I want you to read until 1-7, Micaela. That's for your readings so that we may focus on answering some problems, applying our concepts. No? So that could be part of your readings. No? So starting 1-4 or 1-3 up to 1-7, including this lecture. No? These are actually review lectures to reinforce some concepts regarding algebraic structures, particularly sets of numbers plus its binary operation. Okay, so how will you define now the subgroup? So semigroup is different from subgroup. Of course, semigroup is an associative groupoid. Now, but for subgroup, there's what we call a subdivision of the set G. And that set G is a group and H is non-empty subset. So we have a subset of that group. Kaya nga may subgroup kasi subset ng group. Alright? And it is closed under the product. No? Closed under product. So there's this product binary operation in G. Okay? So meron siyang closed product. Under the product, closed under the product operation in G. If H itself a group, no? So under the product in G, then H is said to be subgroup of G. It is denoted as H is subgroup of G. So this would be the mathematical expression expressing that H is a subgroup of G, knowing that G is a subgroup, G is a group, and H is a subset of G, and H itself is a group, therefore H must be a subgroup of G. Okay, make sense, Micaela? Parang subset lang siya, pero group din. Kaya tawag sa kanya subgroup.
Yes.
Okay? Sige. So let H, now this is now the subgroup, be a non-empty subset of a group G, no? And these are the prerequisites. If and only if, no? So there's this an if and only if A inverse of B is element of H, no? Such that AB is element of H. So meron kang prerequisite. Meron kang prerequisite dyan na titingnan. Makikita natin dyan yung tinatawag na inverse. Yung inverse ng A, rather yung inverse ng B, kinuha mo yung product niya sa A, part pa rin siya ng H. No, part pa rin siya ng H na subset ng G. No, for all AB, element of H. So, kaya lang sa magkakaroon ka ng categorization na ito ay subgroup. If these two satisfy. For all AB, element of H. So, yung A inverse of B is element of H. Such that, if and only if, no, we have this H subgroup of G. Okay? So, siguro bigay tayo ng sample dyan. Let me check our notes. No? Okay, these already cyclic groups. Okay, ito yung study ng subgroup. So we'll just reiterate some terms here. So, but basically, this is the definition. It's actually 1-5. So, idudugtong ko na dito sa 1-5. Okay? Para siyang subset, Micaela, no? Wala siyang pinagkaiba sa subset. Pero yung mismong H, group din siya. We're actually looking here a group inside a group. Now, that's why it's called subgroup. And it should have this condition that A inverse of B element still element of H for A and B element of H. Okay? So yung inverse ng A, kahit i-multiply mo siya doon sa A, yung inverse ng B, still element of H. And it is close to H. So there is close to H. Okay? Now, another concept here under subgroups. It's now, I'm pulling down our lecture notes. Although they are supplementary one to another. No? Okay? Can you see, Micaela, the PDF file? Okay. Okay. So just a vector space can have subspace. As you can see in linear algebra, also we have group. So this is actually the subset with all the structure of a group. So if G is a group, then the order G, no, the order G of G is the number of elements of G. So that could be a definition. So this absolute value here would refers to the order, meaning the number of elements of a G. So if you have 20 elements, you have order 20. No? If you have 5 elements, you have order 5 groups. So that's how we look at that. Okay, primarily finite groups where the above definition is clear. However, we will also occasionally use for finite groups such as this one, real number with under addition operation. Now, another, we could see the definition here for 5.4. If a subset H subset H of a group G is closed under binary operation of G, meaning whether it's multiplication or addition, and if H be induced to the operation from G is itself a group, then H is a subgroup. Yan. And we denote this as H subgroup of G, or or it could be the other way around. No? So if H is subgroup of G and G of G and H not equal to G, then we could write these terms. Another example here are the subgroups. For instance, integer is a subgroup of rational number, and rational number is a subgroup of the real number, and the real number ultimately is a subgroup of a complex number. So these are subgroups. No? Yan yung kanyang hierarchy. Integer, subgroup of Q, Z, subgroup of Q, Q subroot of R, subgroup of R, and R subgroup of C, or complex number. Of course, we have here an example from linear algebra, but we will not discuss that anymore. An example here is this: nth root of unity in C form a subgroup U sub n of the group. So we could always look into samples later if time permits us. Now, there are components as far as the subgroup is concerned. No? We should look at this. If G is a group, then G itself is a subgroup of G. So G is a subgroup of itself, but it's what we call improper subgroup of G. So there is an improper subgroup of G. Kasi yung in itself is not proper. It's an improper subgroup. Okay? You should take note of that, Micaela. That's an improper subgroup of G. And all other subgroups are what we call improper subgroups. Okay? Now, under the subgroup E, meaning if the group has an identity element, of course, this must be a unique identity element for this to become a group, is a trivial subgroup. No? The element, identity element is what we call a trivial subgroup. Okay? And the rest is what we call non-trivial subgroup. Okay, another, let me stress again, there is this categorization of subgroups. First is the improper. The improper subgroup is the group in itself is an improper subgroup of itself. And then we have the all other elements are what we call proper subgroup. And then we have the subgroup identity element E is a trivial subgroup. And the rest are non-trivial subgroups. Okay? Okay, this is an example of non-isomorphic. Okay? So, naalala mo pa, Micaela, yung definition, although I won't ask you anymore about isomorphism. No? So, regarding binary operation. No? So, a non-isomorphic groups, order 4. Why order 4? Because there are 4 elements here, no, of the integer, no, that has modulo 4. Alright? So, ganun lang siya. Oh. So, yung pag-a-add niyan, Micaela, 1 plus 3 is 0 instead of 4. Oh. And then, of course, 3 plus 3 is 2. Ito yung nabanggit ko kanina, no? Tama, Micaela, this is a Kylie table. So, you will only use the element of the set. You cannot be outside the set. No, if you are using a modulo addition here on the order 4, wherein the elements use only 1, 2, 3. Yan. Okay? Clarification, Micaela? About this? So we have 0, 1, 2, 3 added to 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay? So this could be divided into 3 subgroups, mainly trivial group. The trivial group is what we call the identity element. So 0 and 0, or only 0, isa lang naman siya, is the trivial group. In itself is trivial group. Now, non-trivial proper subgroup, kung papansin natin, bakit siya naging non-trivial? Yung 0, 2. Yan, non-trivial subgroup. Yan, there's a trivial group, non-trivial. Of course, the improper subgroup is as a to for itself. In itself, is a trivial, no? And of course, the proper subgroup is 0, 2. Bakit 0, 2? Palagay mo, Micaela, bakit 0, 2 lang? What happened to 1 and 3?
Sir, the answer is similar to one of them.
The answer. Ito dapat sa element na to. No? Dito tayo kukuha. Bakit 0, 2 yung proper subgroup? Of course, yung improper, yung buo, yung trivial, yung 0, because that's the identity element. Bakit 0? 0, 2. ma-observe mo dyan sa ma-observe mo dyan sa chart mismo. Anong kakaiba doon sa partner na 0-2?
Ayun, sir. 2 po yung sagot niya.
Yeah, both of them. So 0 plus 0 here is 0. 2 plus 0 is 0. So yun yung parang unique sa kanya, no? Unique silang dalawa. Unlike itong iba yung sagot. No? Ano ba, 1 plus 3, hindi naman magkaiba eh. Magkaiba siya eh. Ito, 2 plus 2, 0. 0 plus 0, 0. So that's why it's called a subgroup. No, dun sa sagot, 0, magkasama sila. Ayan. Doon sa identity. Kasi hindi rin naman pwede itong 0, 3 and 1 siya. Or 1 and 3. So it must be 0 and 2 that will result to an element. No? That is what we call a non-trivial. Kasi yung mismong element, trivial. No, pero yung element aside from 0 is 2. Yung kasama niya 0, 2. So grupo na sila ngayon na that would be equal to 0. So that's a proper subgroup, not 0 in itself. So 0 in itself is trivial. 0 and 2 are proper non-trivial. That's how we could analyze this group. Of course, the third one is the subgroup. Improper subgroup, say sub 4. Okay? So that's how we look at that. Let's analyze this. Another group of order 4 is client 4 group, denoted as B. For German, beer or pour. Know that every element of its own inverse. This is not the case with say sub 4. So the two groups are not isomorphic. They're not isomorphic. So this case, meron kang ilan yung grupo mo dyan. Of course, trivial group, E. And then meron kang EA. EA, pair. And then EB, yung B din, may E, oh. Ayun. And then yung EC, meron din siya. No? And then of course, yung panlima, yung subgroup. So that every element B in its own inverse, and it's not the case for with Z sub 4. So the two groups are not isomorphic. And ano nga ibig sabihin ng isomorphic, Micaela, can you still recall? If you may recall. Yung term isomorphic.
Ano po ba yung pag 1-to-1 and on-to po?
Ayan, yung there's this 1-to-1 correspondence and meron pang isa.
On-to po.
1-to-1, on-to. Parang tatlo yata yun eh. O dalawa lang?
Parang dalawa lang po naalala ko.
Yeah. Sige, may kita rin natin yun. So anyway, let's continue here. Okay, so for this case, we could make a subgroup diagram, so-called case or I don't know how to pronounce this word diagram for C sub 4 as follow. No, ito yung and B as well. Sa B, ang magdudulot lang ng identity element o non-trivial yung 0, 2. Pero dito sa B, tatlong grupo yung magre-resulta sa identity element E. Okay? Na-gets mo yung diagram? That would represents a diagram presentation of C sub 4. So you have 0, 2. These are the proper non-trivial. This is the proper trivial. And C sub 4 is the improper subset or subgroup. For the B, yung nakalista dito, yan. So may pares siya, tatlong pares ng group that would lead to that identity element that is non-trivial. No? Or trivial rather. And then these three pairs are proper non-trivial. And then B is the improper. Okay? Make sense ba yung diagram?
Yes.
Alright. So yun yung makikita natin doon. Teka, nasa na yung mouse ko? Wala yung mouse ko. Yun. Okay, for a while lang, Mikaela, I need something to, parang nag-aano na yung aking ano. May mga issues yung other pieces ko dito. Saglit lang for a while. Alright, let's continue. Okay, we will see in, of course, the preceding section, 2-8, that every group is a group of permutations. So dyan na pumapasok yung salitang permutations. It's a proper combination with respect to its order. Combination will not have a regard to the order. Okay, yung permutations. So with respect to the order, so every group is a group of permutations. Right. So this gives us an opportunity to visualize group in terms of how they act on various items. For example, suppose we have a rectangle and not a square with the numbered corners. We want to see how many ways we can pick up the rectangle, rotate or flip it around and place it back to its original position. Different configurations can determine from the different arrangements and labels of the corner. So imagine a box that has its label. Labeled corners. The figure below shows that there are 4 configurations of rectangle. This configuration can be generated by 2 movements labeled flip horizontally and flip vertically. The group of order 4 is described these symmetries of rectangle is isomorphic to the Klein 4 group. So let's look at that. So ito yun, no? So there way to flip. Yung 1, 2, 3, 4, pag plinip mo, ang matitira sa likod, ito, yung corners. Tama naman, Micaela, no? Either you flip to the left, you flip to the right, or flip horizontally and vertically. Now, for this case, there are flipping here. You flip horizontally, then you flip vertically, horizontally, And vertically, you will go back to your original position. Of course, but there are many ways to do this, no? So yung dito na pumapasok yung permutations na tinatawag. No, but these are example. Now we state that as a result which allows us to check a group for non-trivial, no? Proper subgroups. We also start using multiplication notation to represent inverses. Yan, so anyway. So these are just examples. Yan, yung mga ilang ways perhaps. Maraming ways, no? But this is one of the example where we could return into the original position of that box. Okay, another theorem here, aside from that, the subset H, no? Did you notice, Dale, Micaela?
Hindi po, sir.
Oo nga, parang wala rin siya sa YouTube. A subset H of a group G is a subgroup of G if and only if. No? So these are the particular elements now. H is closed under the binary operation of G. So whatever binary operations applied to G, it must be applied to H as well. If there are binary operation or binary multiplication or addition, it must be applied to H as well. That's the first one. The identity element of G of E, identity element E of G is in H. So kailangan nasa loob din ng H yung E. Kung wala doon, wala siyang identity element. Hindi siya matatawag na subgroup. Okay, for all A element of H, we also have the inverse of A such that that's also element of H or close to H. So within the set of an H. Ayan, so these are the primary consideration as far as the subset H is concerned to the group G. And that would refer to a subgroup of G. H is a subgroup of G if it satisfies these three conditions. First, H is closed under that binary operation of G. Then we have the identity element that is also in H. And we have the inverse of the element that is also in H. Okay, so those are the three considerations. Alternatively, we have a lecture also here. Ito yung definition niya naman. Dito naman, dinefine niya at let H be a non-empty subset of a group G. So, halos pareho lang to. Pero isa lang yung dinefine niya dito ng isa lang. Pero mas detailed dun sa ating notes, tatlo. Itong tatlong to. Alright. So, is the set of upper triangular n by n matrix with no zeros on the diagonal subgroup is is a subgroup. No? Is a subgroup kasi kung yung original niya ay yung buong matrix na square, ngayon ay upper triangular na yan, makikita natin, saan natin makikita yung yes, we could apply the three elements of a group testing that diagonal element is a group as well. No? Applying the associativity, it may be checked also. I think we have checked one upper triangular matrix on its associativity. Identity is there. Identity is also upper triangular, particular diagonal matrix. And then we could also, what can you say about the inverse? Yung inverse, real number pa rin naman eh. Kasi ito, na-set ng real numbers. No? So it's a yes. No, it's a subgroup. A subgroup of a square matrix, group G, on an nth order. Nth order, that's an n by n matrix whose element are real numbers. Okay? If and F, so this is another example. Perhaps we could reason out the answer. Right? If F will be the set of real valued function with domains R and let f be the subset of f consisting of those functions that have non-zero value at every point r, is the subset of all f element of that function f such that f of 1 is equal to 1, is a subgroup of f. Okay, let's analyze, Michaela. I give you time to reason out why it is no and why it is a yes. Take note, non-zero value. Okay, I give you time to reason out why it's a yes and why it is a no. Yan, napaka-init ngayon. No? Kumusta ang panahon dyan, Michaela? Okay, can you give the reasons for that answer, a no and a yes for A and B? Why it's not a subset, a subgroup under addition? Why it's not? Why it's a yes for multiplication? Considering that factor.
Medyo nalilito lang po, sir.
Okay, basahin mo maigi yung yung assumption diyan. Let f be set of real valued function with domain R. So meaning real numbers, any real numbers, no? And there's what we call an f tilde, that's a subset of f consisting of those functions that have non-zero value. Okay? So that excludes zero, non-zero value at every point of R. So if that would be the case, is f element of fr or tilde, f tilde, such that f of 1 is equal to 1 is a subgroup of f.
Sa addition po, because the identity is 0.
Yeah. So the identity is 0, not close. So the identity is not close. All right. Therefore, though there is in if it's not close, so wala na doon. Wag na natin ituloy sa inverse. So yung identity niya is not close. Okay? How about, of course, obviously, for multiplication, it's a yes because the identity is there, 1. No? The function of x equal to 1. And we have an existing inverse. And the inverse is a real number. So it's close to real number. Therefore, x, kasi ang tinanggal lang naman yung 0, no? No? Therefore, it must be a subgroup. A subgroup for yeah, it's a subgroup for under multiplication. Yes, but not in addition. Okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's continue. So still under subgroup. Let G be a multiplicative group. Okay? So meaning you have binary operation multiplication. A element of G. Then H is all A raised to N such that N is an integer. Now, N is an integer. Is a subgroup and is the smallest subgroup of G that contains A. That is every subgroup of G which contains A, all elements of G, of H. So, ang definition niya dito, so since multiplicative siya, so meaning A times A times A. So, kaya siya A raised to N. So, N is an element of the integer. And A is whatever that's element of G. So, integer lang siya, meaning 0, 1, 2, 3. No? It could be that way. Is a subgroup in the smallest subgroup of G that contains A. That is every subgroup of G which contains A, contains all elements of H. So, yun yung definition niya. No? Kasi multiplication, halimbawa 2. So, kung 2, 2 raised to 1, 2 raised to 2. So, those are the elements. Okay. Note, in Theorem 517, by A raised to 0, we mean identity. So, A raised to 0 is identity. By A raised to, or the inverse, A raised to negative N, where N is an element of natural number. No, not the integer here. We mean, so yan yung mga kahulugan niya. No? All right. So, I think we could stop from here. So just do the readings, Micaela. We will continue. Perhaps on week 11, we will push through the exercises under 1-5. And then, babalik ako dito kung if there are relevant topics pa tayo dito. Kasi this already cosets and normal. So perhaps this will be, I will be discussing this again in some other time, perhaps mid finals. No? So, but the coverage will be until this page, no? Page 7, no? Before cosets and normals. And then, from here, we'll be answering some exercises starting next week, together with some exercises in 1-6 and 1-7. So, please do some readings, both for the module as well as the lecture notes. Okay, Micaela. And then definitely this midterm, I'll be providing a multiple choice this time, no? Kasi nung nakaraan, pinag-isipan ko kung multiple choice o problem solving na lang. But I have this, I opted for you to have just a take-home examination. Okay? So, okay, other thoughts before we close, Micaela? Okay, sige. Just communicate to Dale, no? Yung mga ano natin. So, hindi ko na naman siya nakikita eh. So, I don't know what happened to him, or perhaps mahirap talaga yung internet issues, no? Anyway, sige, let's proceed na
yung huli po niyang sinabi sa akin, sir, kasi lahat po ng networks doon.
Alright. Sige, let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity where we could continue on discussion, conceptual, these ideas, concepts on this algebraic structure in general. We have seen some development. I pray, Lord, that as we discuss these things, that we may appreciate more on this conceptually, and also applying the appropriate methodologies whenever the teaching opportunities is available for us, even Micaela, as she continue to for his teaching ministry and teaching career profession as well. So continually bless her, even her studies, even as she prepare for for his examination, board exam, sooner or later, and eventual practice of the profession. May continually guide her, even Dale, and the rest of the math majors, or even the entire LD Woosley Bethany College students, that we may continue to serve you through the educational ministries. We thank you, Lord. We honor you. This is our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. Okay, thank you so much, Micaela. See you soon. See you tomorrow. God bless you.
Thank you po.